I don't know the people the story took place with, but I did hear the story from Rabbi Goldberg, the head of the yeshiva of Migdal Emek. He said that this couple once came to the Rebbe. So he told the Rebbe that they're not up to keeping Shabbos, and the Rebbe said to them that at the very least, they should know that a Jew keeps Shabbos. Even if they're not ready to keep Shabbos themselves, they should at least know that a Jew keeps Shabbos. That will give them some kind of menuchas hanefesh, some kind of tranquility. That's what I remember. I heard the story from many years ago. I'm thinking about the story in context of what we're learning now. We learned yesterday that the approach of a Jew, of Mordechai Yehudi, is not to bow, not to bend, not to do anything else other than something for Hashem. If it's not for Hashem, we said it's called idolatry. The word idolatry doesn't just mean serving another god. Avodah Zarah means doing something which is strange for you. Just like other gods are strange, they're not the right God, they're just meaningless things. Avodah Zarah, being not unfaithful to Hashem, is called Avodah Zarah, serving a strange God. So we learned Avodah Zarah doesn't just mean serving a strange God, it means doing something which is strange for you. What is strange for a Jew? Doing something which is not for Hashem. And not only that, even when you do something for Hashem, we said, if it's not completely for Hashem, it's also strange for a Jew. Now, it sounds like quite a tall order, but I think that at the very least, we should at least recognize that what the Rebbe is saying is who we are. In other words, we should at least know to ourselves that despite the fact that we may spend a lot of time doing other things, but if at least for a moment of the day, if 10 minutes of the day, we say to ourselves, I want to serve Hashem now, this is for Hashem, that's coming home. That's being who we are. When we do stuff for ourselves, it's satisfying. Our animal soul is satisfied to some extent. I don't know about you, but I'm thinking about, if you could relate to this, I'm thinking about Yontif. In every Yontif, we have 4 incredible meals. Then if we have a 3-day Yontif, we have 6 incredible meals. And in between these 6 incredible meals, we also have Zaynus before davening, and we come out of the Yontif, Baruch Hashem blessed, right? So in the middle of the Yontif, sometimes what happens is you feel very lethargic, feel very heavy. It's just too much, another meal. And that's where Talucha comes in. The Rebbe says every Yontif that we should go to another shul and bring simcha to another shul, and to walk, doesn't matter how long, doesn't matter if it's a block, it doesn't matter if it's 10 miles, walk to another shul and bring simcha to another shul. It really feels so, how do I say this? The Yontif itself, it could be challenging to feel the kedusha, the holiness of what it's about, because you're also eating and you end up feeling heavy. But when you switch to go, okay, now it's time to give. Now let's go to another shul and bring simcha to another shul. It resonates with you inside that, okay, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. What I'm trying to say to you is that even if we're not ready to be like Mordechai Yehudi all the time, we should at least know that we are Mordechai Yehudi. We should at least know that when we give and we devote ourselves to what Hashem wants us to do, it's not something which is a strain on us. It's something which is satisfying in a far deeper way. That's anything which is not for Hashem is unsatisfying. And yes, I have an animal soul like you do, and I know exactly the response of, well, my animal soul is very satisfied when it does A, B, and C. Yeah, that's true on one level. But there is the main part of us, which is an neshama, isn't satisfied. And that indulgence that leaves us wanting, that was speaking about educating children. And our parents make a mistake and think that they could just be very focused and direct about the child's body and the child's mind and give them good academics and maybe even encourage them to do well in Judaic studies as well. but the parents don't think that the child has a neshama, has other needs. And a child has a neshama, and the neshama needs an ambition. The neshama needs a raison d'etre of why I'm here. What am I trying to do? What is my neshama here for? Giving the child the best education and giving the child the athletics and after school programs, but not addressing the child's soul and saying that you have something you could accomplish that no one else can, and you have your neshama does something here, and Hashem wants it to be here. It leaves the child wanting something. There's a pasuk when Hashem sent Adam and Eve out of heaven. It says that Hashem sent them. Vayishlachem, He sent them. And it says in the Torah the words, who sent them? Hashem Elokim. Now the word Elokim we know means concealment. The word Yud-Kei-Vav-Kei means Hashem's mercy. Is being sent out of heaven a merciful thing? Or is it a judgmental, or is it an act of judgment and concealment? On the surface, you're leaving heaven, you're going to this world, which compared to heaven is who knows what. And yet it says, Hashem Havaya. This is a mission from Havaya. Why is it a mission from Havaya? And the answer is, as Ber Mayim Chaim explains, that the greatest rachman, the greatest rachmanis is Hashem giving a Jew a mission, giving a Jew a reason to be. Yes, Adam and Eve are sent out of heaven. Yes, it's not as geschmack to be in this world as it is in heaven. On the other hand, the greatest expression of God's love is Hashem telling the Jew, I'm giving you a mission. You have something to do here. That's Racham. That's how Yosef survived all the years of imprisonment. Yosef, imagine, how do you have the wherewithal to tell his brothers, not only does he forgive them, but why are you upset? Don't be upset. God sent me here. Yosef said, you didn't sell me. Once an object is sold, so the object is now transferred ownership completely to be something else. Yosef said, I was never sold. I knew I have a mission wherever I am. I'm here because Hashem wants me to be here. And therefore, there's no change between being with my father in Canaan and being in that wonderful heaven-like atmosphere, or being here in Egypt. God sent me here. I'm here for a mission. Yosef didn't feel like he's in a cage. Because Yosef felt he's here for a mission. So whatever we're doing in this world, in order to really be satisfied, it's by thinking about the mission that Hashem has given us. That's what is deeply satisfying to us. And yeah, the animal soul wants this and wants that, and it feels good. Okay. But if you want to talk about deep soul satisfaction, it's about being Mordechai Yehudi. It's about not bowing and not bending and doing and thinking, what does that, is it for Hashem? If it's for Hashem, it's me. The mission. Yes, Zev remembers when Rabbi Mendel Cohen was here for a Shabbos, and he kept on talking about the mission. The mission. It was quite a number of years ago, but unforgettable, absolutely. When you think about the mission, there is a great simcha. It's a different thing. All right. The mission. Fantastic. Okay, let's continue on in the Sikha inside. Where are we up to? Hold on. Please pause for station identification. We are at 6:41 a.m.
Page 69, all the way close to the bottom of the second column.
Whoa, Yonatan. Fantastic. Maybe even show us your face, Yonatan. Okay, not that much. Fine. But thank you for pointing out where we are. Okay. Last paragraph. And this is the will of Mordechai. He does not bow or bend to anything in this world. Doesn't bow or bend to anything in this world. Even if it's kosher. Mordechai doesn't bow down to anything, even if it's kosher. Anything which is not for Hashem is strange for him. So he doesn't bow his head to it. He doesn't ascribe any significance to it. He doesn't. What does bow his head mean? It doesn't just mean doesn't do it. I think what it means is doesn't ascribe, just intellectually. We could classify things as having importance. This is important. This is good. Thank you for the compliment. I think Mordechai Yehudi not only doesn't do the wrong thing, doesn't do things which aren't for the sake of Hashem, doesn't bow, doesn't bend. He doesn't think that's worth anything. It doesn't. They say the story. I heard it from too many people in too many different versions to know the exact way it happened. But everyone, I'm sure, heard the story before. How the Rebbe, when the Rebbe walked to the shul on Shabbos, the Rebbe would greet everybody with a nod of his head. But the Rebbe would greet non-Jews with a good morning. And someone who was insulted, the Rebbe didn't greet him with a good morning, just with a nod of his head. He said, "What's that about?" And the Rebbe said, he's never bowed his head to a non-Jew. Bowing your head means that you ascribe to some kind of importance, subservience to it. There was a Pelish tzaddik, I don't remember the name of him, this tzaddik, but this story is printed in Rabbi Zevin's Treasured Hasidic Tales. There's a tzaddik who was told about another tzaddik, and he was wondering, if this tzaddik is really an incredible tzaddik, and so he sent a third tzaddik. Okay, I'm getting confusing over here. There is Reb David, let's say, who wants to know about Rabbi Yitzchak. So he sends Levi. Levi, find out about Rabbi Yitzchak, find out if he's a really big tzaddik. So he comes back and he says, when he has soup, he doesn't bow his head, doesn't bend his head to the soup. He lifts the soup, the spoon all the way up to his lips. So really, that's not such a big deal. And he's telling me, I can do the same thing. And he takes the soup, he lifts the spoon up, and he puts his head down. And the son said, "Don't worry, Dad, try again." He says, "No, if I can't do it, I can't do it." So bowing your head to the soup doesn't just, it means you think there's something else out there. It doesn't matter if it's kosher, it's not kosher. Is it for Hashem? So bowing your head, do you bow your head? Do you think about other things that have any importance or not? At least in your mind, are there other things that really matter? Or are they Baba Mises? Okay, L'uma Zeis, Ratzim Hamanu, next page. Aveda Zara, Leva Zer, Mamshach Tzlan, Ala Kol Aveda, Shazar Le Aver Yehudi. Haman's desire is not just idolatry, but anything which is strange for a Jew. Whatever is not for the sake of Hashem, he's okay with it. His claim is and assume Haman says, since we're in this world and we're in exile and we're under the dominion of the laws of nature that God created, therefore we have to reckon with them, at least in regarding mundane things which are kosher. At least you should reckon those things have importance. You should bow your head, Haman says. There are things which are important. Haman says, we're in a world. There's a limit. God made a world according to nature, and therefore there are other things out there. Hashem made other things. What are you talking about, Mordechai? All there is serving Hashem. There are some people out there which are very religious and they're very abrasive. And they're always pulling out the God card. They're what does Hashem want? What does Hashem want? And it could be annoying to have a conversation with someone like that. They're very abrasive. Mordechai wasn't abrasive. Mordechai wasn't, but what does Hashem want? We said earlier, not just Mordechai did everything for the sake of Hashem, but completely and totally, every action itself was only felt what he did was what Hashem wants. Mordechai was total neshama, total soul. There was no like those abrasive people, which are like you feel in the background the soundtrack of Tuki did a mitzvah, and they're so self-righteous. Mordechai was like the story of the Alter Rebbe. That the Alter Rebbe famously, I know you guys know the story, just briefly, the Alter Rebbe was served, honored his guest, Rav Shlomo Karliner, and who visited the Alter Rebbe for a Shabbos, and all the members of the Alter Rebbe's household wanted to participate in this great mitzvah, preparing for such a holy guest. And everybody, without telling anybody else, thought the best way to honor this guest is by adding salt to the soup. And so when the Alter Rebbe served the soup, the Alter Rebbe consumed the soup as if there was no problem. Rav Shlomo Karliner couldn't eat it because it's so salty. And the Rav Shlomo Karliner asked the Alter Rebbe, how could you eat this? The Alter Rebbe said that once he was by the Maggid, being by the Maggid, that affected him. There's no taste in the physical. So even though we're talking about the mitzvah of enjoying Shabbos, but for the Alter Rebbe, there is no sense of the physical enjoyment of it. All there is the mitzvah. That's Mordechai. All there is the mitzvah. Not just it's for the sake of Hashem officially, but completely and totally it's for the sake of Hashem. So Haman's desire, conversely, is there's other things out there. God made other things. V'nimtza shalatzis tenish ve'ish. Yistir Menei Beisa comes out to do both the will of Mordechai and the will of Haman is a contradiction in terms. Because when a Jew is found in the world, and in the world itself, he is in time of exile, and he has many limitations of nature, and he has many limitations of the country that he is in. As the Gemara says, the law of the land is the law, which force him, when they're not, and the law of the land is not in contradiction to the laws of Torah mitzvahs, but the law of the land is a law when it is, in fact, not a contradiction to Torah mitzvahs, which force him, according to what Hashem wants, according to Torah, to act a certain way. So at that time, when he is in this world, he is in an exile, and there are mandates of what the world is telling him to do, and the Torah says that these things are in fact the law of Torah, so you can't have the will of Mordechai at that time. It's called a gisha. Mordechai's approach is not only should we not do things which are not for the sake of Hashem, but Mordechai's approach is nothing else should be considered. Nothing else should be considered. That's Mordechai's approach. So it seems like if we're in the world and we have to reckon with what the country says and we have to reckon with what nature says, it's not possible to be a Mordechai. His whole approach can't exist because Hashem put us in a world where there are other things out there. And Hashem told us in His Torah that we have to conform to the law of the land. The whole idea of reckoning with what the world does as being important is something that Mordechai says should not be. On the other hand, if we do consider the fact that God did send the Jewish people into exile, so then if that's the center of gravity, if that's our orientation, then we should act according to Haman. We should act in a limited way according to what the world says. If it doesn't contradict Torah mitzvahs, it's not against the Torah, so then we have to follow what Haman says. Haman says you have to reckon with the world. The world matters. The world exists, and the world matters. And you have to, if that should be your center of gravity, that should be your orientation. As long as it doesn't contradict Torah mitzvahs, I'll give that to you, Mordechai. But at least your approach should be there's other things out there. Remember, Mordechai and Haman aren't just about doing what Hashem wants or not doing what Hashem wants. Mordechai and Haman are, is there something else out there besides Hashem that you should listen to, that you should pay attention to? Mordechai is, don't bow down to anything, nothing else is important. Haman is, no, there's other things that are important. So when you're in Golus, shouldn't your approach be like Haman? Other things are important. That's what it would seem, that you have to reckon with the world. Afal became, that should resonate with us, right? Haman is saying something we all familiar with. You should reckon with the world. Don't we think that way? So the Rebbe says, no, we should not think that way. This is the chiddush. This is the novelty that we're learning over here. Next column. When you're connected with Hashem, the way Hashem is beyond the world, we have the ability to connect two opposite things. Even when we're in the world and when the exile, we do not bow, we do not bend, we are completely above it. When we're connected to Eibishter, we're completely above it, and no, we don't reckon with the world. What does that mean? How does that pass? How is this possible? What are we talking about? So we're going to see what Rebbe is talking about, but just for now, just the fundamental truth that yes, it's possible. Yes, it's possible. There was a chassid, the previous Rebbe told them to say l'chaim and it was against his doctor's advice in a very serious way, and he didn't want to sit l'chaim. He was afraid. So previous Rebbe said, if you're a servant of Hashem, you're beyond nature. So he's thinking, am I a servant of Hashem? Should I do the what's it called, the burning of the witches? What's it called? The test by fire? Should I do that? Not so sure. So the previous Rebbe said that he read his thoughts. The previous Rebbe said, my father once told me to do something which was impossible, and he told me that a servant of Hashem is not limited to nature. So I was thinking, says the previous Rebbe, that am I a servant of Hashem? And my father said, if you're connected to a servant of Hashem, you're also beyond nature. In other words, yes, you are who you are, but the Frierdiker was talking to you, and therefore you're beyond nature. We are connected to Mordechai Tzaddik, and we're connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way is beyond the world, and therefore, yes, there is a truth over here about not reckoning with the world at all. See what that means? Let's continue further on for right now, after we've had this basic paradigm shift, that this is possible. Now we can go back to the Medrash and understand the two explanations of the Medrash express two different ways a Jew could live in exile. Remember, the Medrash says that when Mordechai and Haman were summoned by Achashverosh to be the party planners of the meal, so the first explanation the Medrash says, Achashverosh, what are you doing? This is impossible. You can't have both. That's the first explanation of the Medrash. Second explanation of the Medrash says that this is only possible when Mashiach will come. What's the Medrash telling us? The Medrash is telling us there's two ways to live in exile. There's two ways to look at the world. Way number one is like this. Since God sent the Jew into this world, and in this world itself, He sent us into exile, and we're under the dominion of the rule of King Achashverosh, and this is the halacha in Torah. The Torah itself says the law of the land is a law. So it's possible to think that when we're talking about something in this world, that is not a contradiction to Torah mitzvahs. The Torah mitzvah doesn't say you cannot do. You might think regarding those things that you have to reckon with what the world says. You cannot have both the will of Mordechai and the will of Haman at the same time. You can't have both. You can't reckon with the world and say I'm a servant of Achashverosh, and at the same time say I'm like Mordechai. The world doesn't matter. You can't have both. That's manavshach. Anyway you look, it doesn't make sense. If God Himself sent us in exile, this means that means we're somewhat limited according to the laws of nature and the laws of the country, as Haman says. And if we're not in Golus, we're not in exile, then we can act like Mordechai. So if we're either in the Mordechai zone, where all there is the will of Hashem, or we're in the Haman zone, where there is a world and there are the laws of the country, and you have to reckon with the laws of the country, at least when they're not against the laws of Torah mitzvahs. So either you're in the Mordechai zone, where there's nothing else, or you're in the Haman zone, where there is something else. You can't have both, it would seem. Regarding the obligations that we have to keep the Torah, certainly it's obvious that no one has any jurisdiction over a Jew, even during the exile. No one could stop you from doing what Hashem wants you to do. If we're talking about Torah mitzvahs, what do we have to according to the Torah? Okay, so we know the same story. The previous Rebbe was sent to exile in Kashtama, and on the way to the exile on the platform, waiting for the train, the previous Rebbe asks to speak, and he says a few words to the Hasidim who were there, and he said that his father said, "Not with our will did we go into exile. Not with our will will we leave the exile. Our father, our king, sent us into exile, and our father, our king, will take us out of exile. that all nations of the world should know that only our bodies are in exile, not our souls. And regarding the obligations of Torah mitzvahs, there is no one who has any force over us. That's what the previous Rebbe said. And which is just an incredible thing, thinking about he's coming from Spalerka, coming from prison, and this is his first statement, you go back in there. But that's regarding Torah mitzvahs. That's regarding Torah mitzvahs. Torah says, don't reckon with okay, Torah mitzvahs. But regarding the nature of the world, regarding the laws of the country, about the mundane matters of your life, so then you think either I'm going to follow Mordechai or I'm going to follow Haman. And if I'm in this world, shouldn't I follow the path of Haman, that the world matters? This is a real question. Either you go, let's say, random example, you go to this house in the corner of Crest and Cassia, and you go to the bottom floor because you go to the top floor because you have to check your tefillin because it's Elul, right? Should you also go to the other house over there to Dr. Bressman to get a physical done? Or all there is the will of Mordechai. All there is Shulchan Aruch. There's no such thing as nature. Do you only go upstairs? You also go downstairs. Are you only Mordechai? Or is there something else? Like Haman says. Oymar Medrash says in Medrash, when is there a contradiction between these two approaches of Mordechai and Haman? That's only Kasha Medubar B'Negsh B'Elam. That's when you're talking about the way things are ordinarily, the way the world runs ordinarily. When you're talking about Hashem himself, the way he is above the world, then both things can happen at the same time. What does it mean both things can happen at the same time? That a Jew can be in this world and in exile and be a servant of Achashverosh, and together with this be completely above the world and above the exile. Not to bow or bend. And not only will he not bow down to the world, but he's able to change the king and nations of the world that rule over him. And this is why the Gemara doesn't qualify its statement that Achashverosh makes a party like the will of Mordechai and the will of Haman, and sounds like from the Gemara that it's possible to have both. Why? Because it is possible. A Gemara in Vatel says the Gemara doesn't say this can't happen. Why? Because Mordechai stood steadfast in his devotion to Hashem. He did not bow or bend. He denied idolatry, denied anything which is not for the service of Hashem. How does it that connected him with the power of God that is above the limitations of the world? And this empowers him. His devotion to Hashem empowers him. Now what happens with Mordechai? Although he was living under the rule of Achashverosh, and Achashverosh puts Haman in such a pedestal, yet, and Haman is the second to the king. Haman's given the signet ring of Achashverosh. Yet, despite all this, Mordechai affects the king by him acting in a perfect way of lo yichli shtachel, not to budge an inch. By doing this, he affects the decree of the king to be annulled, and Mordechai to rise to power, and Mordechai to become the second of the king. And this is what God gives over to the will of a Jew. God gives this to Zev Kester and to Dr. Bressman, to Nachman Krashinsky, and Dave Lebel, Michal Mordechai, and Yonatan Hamburger. What does God give to us? He tells us that even while you're in exile, you have the choice. It's a choice to act in a way of ish v'ish, act like both. How so? Either you could say, I'm only going to be strong about the bread and butter obligations of Torah mitzvahs. I'm only going to be strong about those things which I have to do, which are biblical, which are rabbinic, which are a Jewish custom perhaps, but only those things, those have-tos. Regarding everything else, I feel that I am subservient to the nature of the world. I'm subservient to what nature says. As Haman says, there are other things out there. You should feel, Haman says, at least we're not talking, fine, you want to go to shul, you want to daven, you want to learn Torah, do all those things. But you should at least know that there's something else. Just to take Haman to a little farther extreme, because I know he sounds very, a friend of mine told me he asked another businessman for a favor. And the businessman he asked for a favor was very wealthy. And it's a favor he could easily do. He says, for years, the guy is refusing to help me. It wasn't Lashon Hara, I know the guy is. So the guy's refusing to help me for years. And I finally cornered him and I said to him, why don't you want to help me? And the guy says, listen, you're crazy. I mean, you're crazy. The way business works is that everything has to have some kind of lucrative benefit. You don't do things just to help someone else. You just don't do that. You're a religious guy. You don't do that. Why not? He says, because if you're not doing something for the business, it's taking away. It's taking away. It's taking away. If it's not benefiting you, it's taking away. There's no in between. Either it's benefiting you or it's taking away. That's what he said. And he refused doing the favor. And he said to him that you're an idiot for thinking otherwise. Psst, unbelievable. I mean, the Gemara says the opposite. The Gemara says if one person can benefit and you can't lose, even the people of stone are acting like that. You want to help the other person, like acting like there's someone from stone. You don't want to help. You're not losing anything. They say about Galicianer people, which I'm from Galicia, but it's a joke. Galicianer people, they say if you ask them the time, they say how much. Want to know the time it is? How? Okay, it's 7:04. I got to go. But the point I want to say, I'll tell you guys is that the Eibishter made the whole world, and there's no such thing as any part of our life that we departmentalize and say it's not according to the will of Hashem. It has some other force there. And therefore, we should never feel imprisoned. To feel whatever's going on is the will of Hashem, and there is no other force. Have a great day, Michal Mordechai. Great day, Dr. Bresson. Don't worry, Zev. We'll get in more detail tomorrow. Zev wants to know who this guy is. Maybe you could